Scripture for today, this is from the lectionary for All Saints' Day from Ruth. Then she started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her two daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to go back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you, in the houses of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughter. It has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord has turned against me." Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth clung to her. So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you, or turn my back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. When you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus, and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said, "Woman," to her. The wisdom of the Lord. Well, we have one heart group going that meets today again at noon, going very well. I'm willing to organize another one. They are about sharing our selves and souls in the process of transforming life for each other. But wait a minute, we're really not sharing ourselves. I just said it because we're not sharing ourselves, we're sharing our soul. The question that Wesley asked was not, "How are you?" I get tired of. And it wasn't, "How is yourself today?" It was, "How is it with your soul?" I've been talking a lot about language for a while now, and I think last week I took issue with a firefighter named Lance Garland, who wrote an op-ed in the Times about his fellow firefighters having to leave the force because they refused to get vaccinated. And he kept saying that they were forced out of their jobs, but thinking about it, they were given a reasonable choice. So the language should be, they left their jobs. Or how about Aaron Rodgers, who was asked if he was vaccinated and said he was immunized, knowing that he was not really answering the question. And again, after it was found out, saying he didn't lie. Well, that's kind of iffy. What he did is he perpetuated a lie. Elsewhere, I've said that regulations should be called protections. I believe entitlements should be called benefits. And the problem with Greek, I've shared with you before about words such as pistis and metanoia. Pistis can mean trust, and it can mean faith, and it can mean belief, and that mixes all up. With all this in mind, I thought today I'd share with you a few word companions. The first is to look at our identity in light of either what we do or who we are. By what we do or who we are. Now, I know I've shared this with you many times before, but it's so significant that in Japan, they identify with a group that they belong to rather than what they do. So that the CEO and the janitor, who both are employed at Sony, identify first by belonging to Sony than what they do. And from experience, I know they go to the same year-end party. Can you imagine the CEO and the janitor in the same party in the onsen naked together? Now that's what we need with our CEOs, don't you think? Generally in America, when we meet someone, we immediately want to know what they do. What's their job, which is hard because there are people who don't have jobs. And we know that means that they don't do very much, because really doing is having a job, which is hard for people who are staying at home taking care of children. We know that that's not really an important thing in life, is it? When we ask, what do you do? We are ascertaining value. We could have said, tell me about your children. That really gets things going with people. Tell me about your children or your family. We could have asked where they live. Geography has a lot to play in people. And we could have said, what do you spend the majority of your time doing? Hey, that's me, echo. In Japan, they ask about where one belongs. In America, it's about what one does. Should I wait? What do you do focuses on an individual and eventually on that person's resume, a list of things that we have done in the past that make us who we are. Do we on who we are relating to, characteristics, dispositions, and attributes emerge. We don't have force shields around ourselves. Anything and everything we encounter in our lives presents possibility for us to change. Who we marry, or if we don't marry, makes a big difference on who we become. If we have children who are girls or boys, it makes a big difference. You don't believe me? I remember going to a video store once and saw a father who I knew had 3 daughters, and in his hand was the movie Mean Girls. I was with my children and I had 3 Godzilla movies. Think about it. I was listening to the World Series recently. The commentators were praising Hank Aaron for his home runs, which is a great accomplishment. He will be remembered always for his home runs. But then one of the commentators says, you know, I met him once and he's kind of funny. He was playing practical jokes on all of us. Can you imagine? I didn't know that Hank Aaron was funny. Humor is a characteristic, not an accomplishment. It's a characteristic that's born out of relationships. It's not self-contained. And humor grows as people are together. It's harder to be humorous when you're by yourself. But when you're with people, who knew that Hank Aaron was funny? Do you think Aaron Rodgers is funny? Characteristics say more about who a person is than accomplishments. Focusing on our characteristics, we are focusing on our relationships, including our relationship with God. Accomplishments provoke pride. Characteristics stimulate integrity. When I meet people, I've always had a hard time trying to describe Kenneth to them. And what I always seem to do is I say, well, he was at American University and he had a 4.0, which really makes him have status in the world, right? But that isn't it. Not the most significant thing about him at all. It was his soul. It was his heart. It's hard to describe. I think those who knew him know what I'm trying to describe. His was an open and pure and loving heart. And he was a good soul. The second pairing of words is between self and soul. Early Methodist meetings, they didn't ask, how are you today? Or, how is it with yourself? They used the word soul. In the meantime, language in our world has self all over the place. You know, I think the self-help section in the bookstore is larger than the religious section, which tells us a lot. Selves accomplish things. Souls watch and listen. Selves are contained and owned. Souls are pliant and expansive. Selves focus attention on the individual, souls on relationships. Selves ultimately suggest division. Souls are all about the interrelationships of all things. Bottom line, the self is just the ego. The ego. When we talk about self-improvement, it doesn't include anybody else. So what I asked today is, what would soul improvement look like? The self looks like a ball. The soul appears as a web. Souls include all my relationships from the past, from prior generations, from a special dog or pet in my life, are all a part of my soul. This means the souls include the dead. Mexican celebration that I was sharing about, the Day of the Dead, where those who have gone before us are recognized for their continued presence with us, and they remain a part of who we are regardless of what we do. The soul has to do with relationships, and that includes our relationship with God. The soul is that part of us which is with God and connected to God. Without relationships, there's no soul. The soul is also ever changing, being affected by all that is a part of our life. The self has a shell, and it determines what is a part of me and what is not. With the soul, anything can be another thread on the tapestry of my soul. The self, one usually believes one knows who one is. With the soul, you must give up that self that thinks he or she knows who he or she is. We must give up who we think we are to be born into who we really are in God. Of course, this reminds us of Jesus' words, when you lose your life, you save it. Can you imagine what church would be like if we changed the language and we talked about souls? Third pairing, finding and awakening. Seek and ye shall find, it says in the Gospels. It's a good message, but I think a little differently on that. Seeking and finding for us becomes a job that takes effort, and it usually includes reward and accomplishment. We seek to find a new job. We seek to find a new partner, maybe. We seek to find purpose and meaning in the self-help section of the bookstore. We are driven to find ourselves and will be terribly disappointed. The problem with that seeking is it's directional and intentional to the point where we become blinded by anything peripheral. We seek and are driven to find that thing that we know we're supposed to find, that we expect to find. We think we're going to find ourselves, and mercilessly, we only find our egos. Just like love is something that if you give it away, you only get more. It's when we let go of ourselves that our vision expands. Silence rather than words is the language of the soul. Instead of seeking to find, we awaken to what is already there. It's a matter of seeing and not doing. Instead of having in mind something we seek, we just open our minds to all that is there. In the end, we must let go of ourselves in order to save our souls. A book. I'm sorry, it's another old one, 1989, Soul Making by Alan Jones. Little story about this. I knew I had a copy somewhere, and I was seeking it all over the place. I'm talking about my own bookshelves. I'm trying to find this book. I can't find it. Eventually, I found it in the pile of the books I was going to give away. I'm not giving it away. But anyway, when I was going through the bookshelves, I found myself looking at other books. And I spent an hour just checking out all these other books. I didn't find the one I was looking for, but man, I found a lot. Then, of course, they came along one of my books entitled Peripheral Vision by Catherine Bateson. Jones believes that the path of salvation is in soul making. That is, growing our souls, maturing in faith, and getting closer to God. Sounds a little bit like going on to perfection, doesn't it? And the irony is that this occurs not when we find ourselves, but when we lose ourselves, by opening ourselves to the deepest part of our souls that live in the web of relations that makes up reality. Did you know that All Saints Day used to be called All Souls Day? Anybody remember that? It was All Souls Day. Saints kind of sounds like perfection, doesn't it? I don't think I'm ever going to be a saint, but I know I have a soul. Soul means everybody is in it together. We are all connected in this process. That includes Paul. It even includes the dead. Today we celebrate our dead. We do not do so as if they're off in heaven somewhere, but we celebrate them as they continue to make up our souls. On the Day of the Dead, people talk to the dead. At the Obon festival in Japan, people dance with the dead. The dead are not a temporal abstraction, they are eternal companions. And they continue to be a part of us and to form us and hopefully to awaken us. Finally, from Alan Jones' book, Soul Making. The good news is that we are lovable and we are loved. That is, we have a soul. We have an identity. We are somebody. The bad news is that we neither know it or believe it. Soul making involves the willingness to cultivate a certain disposition towards the world and to other people, an attitude of receptivity and openness. The question is, are we so wrapped up in ourselves that we have lost the capacity to be touched at our deepest? If we can still be reached by the world and what is in it, there is hope. The soul is alive. Love is a possibility. How is it with your soul? Amen.